For decades, the academic elite taught us that negotiation was a sterile, hyper-rational game of mathematics and logical compromises. We were told to look at agreements as simple economic equations, where two civilized parties sit across a polished mahogany table and calmly split the difference to find a middle ground. But when Chris Voss stepped into the world of high-stakes international hostage negotiations as the lead kidnapper investigator for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, he realized that this traditional, polite academic model was not only deeply flawed, but it was also actively dangerous. In a crisis where a bank robber is holding a sawed-off shotgun to a teller's head, or a terrorist cell is holding innocent tourists in a dense jungle, you cannot simply split the difference. You cannot compromise and say, "Fine, you keep half the hostages and I will take the other half." In the real world, compromise is almost always a catastrophic failure, leaving both sides dissatisfied, or in Voss's world, dead. Voss completely revolutionized the psychology of negotiation by recognizing a fundamental human truth that Wall Street and Harvard had completely ignored. Human beings are inherently irrational, emotional, and driven by deep-seated psychological fears. When we are under intense stress, our logical prefrontal cortex completely shuts down, and our primitive, emotional amygdala takes total control of our behavior. Therefore, trying to argue with a difficult opponent using dry facts, cold statistics, or rigid spreadsheets is a complete waste of energy. To win a high-stakes argument, you must master what Voss explicitly calls tactical empathy. This is not about being a soft, weak, or overly sentimental pushover who agrees with everything the other side says. Tactical empathy is an aggressive, highly calculated intelligence-gathering weapon. It is the practice of deeply understanding the opponent's emotional state, mapping out their specific internal worldview, and using that exact data to systematically dismantle their psychological defenses. The very first physical tool you must master to deploy tactical empathy is the late-night FM DJ voice. This is a specific vocal tone that is deep, calm, slow, and completely downward inflected. When you speak with this deliberate, unshakable cadence, it triggers a profound neurochemical reaction in the listener's brain, immediately lowering their heart rate, soothing their anxiety, and turning off their defensive fight or flight mechanisms. It asserts absolute authority without creating an ounce of pushback or friction. Once you have mastered the voice, you immediately pair it with a devastatingly effective conversational technique known as mirroring. In the vocabulary of the FBI, mirroring is the act of repeating the exact last 1 to 3 critical words of whatever your opponent has just said. Opponent, I've had a completely exhausting week, and your demands are totally unreasonable. Negotiator, late night DJ, totally unreasonable. This sounds laughably simple on the surface, but its neurological impact is truly miraculous. When you mirror someone, you are not injecting your own ego, your own arguments, or your own defensive counter-narratives into the conversation. You are functioning as a perfect emotional sounding board. The human brain possesses an intense subconscious urge to clarify what it has just heard, so when you repeat their last few words back to them, the opponent will naturally keep talking. They will elaborate, fill the silence, drop their guard, and routinely reveal critical pieces of hidden strategic information that they never intended to share, all because you had the discipline to mirror their thoughts instead of starting a shouting match. Once you have established a calm emotional baseline using mirrors and a controlled vocal tone, you must begin to actively manipulate and neutralize the negative emotions that are preventing the other person from making a deal. To do this, Chris Voss introduces a highly sophisticated psychological tool called labeling. A label is a concise, non-judgmental verbal observation of the opponent's emotional state or hidden fears. You look closely at their body language, their choice of words, and their tone of voice, and you explicitly call out what you see by using very specific introductory phrases, such as, "It looks like," "It sounds like," or "It seems like." You never say the word "I," because using the phrase "I hear" or "I think" immediately injects your own ego back into the room, making the opponent defensive. Incorrect. I think you're being incredibly defensive about this contract. Correct. It seems like there is a lot of hidden anxiety about the long-term risk here. When you label a negative emotion, like fear, anger, or resentment, something truly incredible happens inside the human brain. Neurological imaging shows that the moment a negative emotion is explicitly named and brought into the light of conscious awareness, the electrical activity in the emotional amygdala drops dramatically, and the rational parts of the brain start to wake back up. You are effectively performing emotional acupuncture. If an opponent is furious because they feel they are being taken advantage of, you do not argue with them or tell them to calm down. Instead, you calmly look at them and say, "It looks like you feel your hard work is completely unappreciated." The moment they hear that label, their chest relaxes, their defenses drop, and they realize they are dealing with someone who genuinely comprehends their position. This emotional clearing allows you to execute a terrifyingly counterintuitive strategic maneuver. You must completely stop trying to get the other person to say the word yes. Traditional, old-school sales trainers and negotiation gurus are completely obsessed with forcing the opponent into a yes momentum trap. They design a series of manipulative, leading questions intended to force you to say yes over and over again, believing that once you say yes to the small things, you will be psychologically forced to say yes to the big deal. Voss completely rejects this approach, proving that the word yes is actually one of the most toxic, deceptive words in the history of communication. When you push an ordinary person for a quick yes, they immediately feel cornered, manipulated, and deeply insecure. They will often give you a fake, polite counterfeit yes just to make you shut up and go away, with absolutely zero intention of actually executing the agreement. A principled FBI negotiator understands that the real, authentic start of any successful negotiation always begins with the word no. When a human being says no, they feel an immediate, profound rush of safety, control, and absolute autonomy. They have drawn a boundary, and because they feel safe behind that boundary, their mind naturally opens up to listen to what you have to say next. Voss advises you to actively invite the word no early in the discussion by shifting your questions completely. Instead of asking a client, "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" you should look at your watch and ask, "Is now a completely terrible time to talk?" They will happily say no, it is not a terrible time, and because they said no, they feel completely in control of the interaction, allowing you to seamlessly dive into your pitch with their undivided, relaxed attention. Traditional approach. Are you interested in making more profit this quarter? FBI approach. Have you completely given up on optimizing your quarterly profit? Invites a safe no. Furthermore, you must learn to distinguish between the polite, superficial phrase "you're right" and the deeply transformative breakthrough phrase "that's right." When you corner an opponent with an airtight logical argument, they will often look at you, nod their head, and say, "You're right," just to get you to stop talking. It is a polite way of dismissing you. But when you use tactical empathy, mirroring, and labeling to perfectly summarize their deepest fears, their unstated desires, and their hidden frustrations back to them, they will look at you with wide eyes and say, "That's right." Those two simple words represent the absolute holy grail of conflict resolution. It means they feel completely understood on a cellular level, and the moment they utter that phrase, the invisible wall between you vanishes, allowing you to pivot directly toward a collaborative solution. Once the negative emotions have been neutralized and you have secured a deep connection, it is time to actively seize total control of the negotiation dynamic without the other party ever realizing that they are being directed. Traditional bargainers try to exert control by making aggressive demands, pounding their fists on the table, or giving rigid ultimatums. This brute force approach almost always triggers an intense counter-reaction, stalling the deal or causing the other side to walk away out of pure spite. Voss avoids this friction by weaponizing a highly specific linguistic tool known as calibrated questions. These are open-ended questions that completely strip away the aggressive sting of an interrogation, forcing the opponent to expend their own mental energy to solve your problems. A true calibrated question always begins with the words "what" or "how." You must completely banish the word "why" from your vocabulary during a live dispute, because "why" is a naturally accusatory word that triggers an immediate instinctual defense mechanism in every human culture on Earth. If you ask an employee, "Why did you do that?" they hear a parent or a judge condemning their character. But if you shift the language and ask, "What caused you to take that specific approach?" you have asked the exact same question while removing all the emotional toxicity, turning it into a collaborative puzzle. The single most powerful, legendary calibrated question in the entire FBI playbook is the deceptively simple query, "How am I supposed to do that?" Opponent, the price is $100,000, and that is completely non-negotiable. Negotiator, DJ, hear you. But looking at our budget, how am I supposed to do that? When you deliver this specific question with a gentle, deferential tone of voice, you are executing a brilliant psychological judo move. You are not saying no, you are not being combative, and you are not making a counter-offer. You are politely inviting the opponent to look at your financial reality and design a solution for you. Because you have given them an illusion of control, their ego will naturally compel them to try to answer the riddle. They will look at their own numbers, offer concessions, adjust their timelines, or lower their price, all because they are trying to answer your calibrated question. If they double down and aggressively say, "That is your problem, figure it out," you have still gained invaluable data, proving that you have hit their absolute structural bottom line. To safely deploy these calibrated questions in the middle of a highly hostile environment, you must proactively prepare the ground using a technique Voss calls an accusation audit. Before you begin making your requests or addressing a crisis, you must sit down with a piece of paper and write out every single terrible, nasty, unfair thing the other side could possibly say about you. You look at the situation from their darkest, most cynical perspective. Are you a small startup trying to pitch a massive conglomerate? Then their internal thoughts are that you are inexperienced, sloppy, underfunded, and a massive liability to their corporate safety. Instead of hiding from these brutal assumptions or hoping they won't notice, you walk straight into the room and list every single one of those accusations out loud before they can even open their mouth. You look the corporate executive in the eye and say, "Look, before we begin, I want to say that it probably looks like we are a completely disorganized, underfunded startup that is going to waste your valuable time and expose your division to massive operational risk. By executing this bold accusation audit, you completely steal their thunder. You have voiced their silent fears before they could weaponize them against you, making those accusations sound absurdly harsh when spoken out loud. The executive will almost always rush to reassure you, saying, 'Oh, come on, let's not go that far. We know you have great technology.' You have successfully vacuumed the negative energy out of the room, leaving a clean slate for open, profitable collaboration. The absolute final frontier of a high-stakes negotiation involves the brutal, chaotic reality of hard pricing, competitive bidding, and the ultimate discovery of what Chris Voss defines as black swans. In the vocabulary of the intelligence community, a black swan is an invisible piece of highly critical information, a hidden variable that sits completely outside your current worldview, but changes absolutely everything the moment it is uncovered. Every single human being you negotiate with possesses at least 3 black swans: hidden personal motivations, religious beliefs, intense domestic pressures, or corporate secrets that they are fiercely hiding from the world. If you can uncover these hidden anomalies using tactical empathy, you instantly unlock infinite leverage over your opponent, regardless of how small or weak your company appears on paper. To illustrate this, Voss recalls a terrifying hostage situation where a radical group was executing captives with zero regard for financial ransom demands. Traditional logic suggested that the terrorists wanted money or political prisoners released. But by listening deeply to the subtle religious metaphors and specific vocabulary used by the captors during phone calls, the negotiation team uncovered a massive black swan. The group didn't care about the money at all. They were actually desperate for international validation and a formal seat at the geopolitical table. Armed with this hidden knowledge, the government shifted its strategy completely, offering small diplomatic acknowledgments instead of cash, safely resolving the crisis without shedding another drop of blood. In daily business, a black swan might be discovering that a seemingly greedy CEO is refusing your contract not because of the price, but because their father founded the company and they are terrified of looking weak to their elderly parent. When the negotiation eventually narrows down to a hard, cold battle over dollars and cents, you must abandon the amateur practice of guessing random numbers and implement a highly structured mathematical trading system called the Ackermann model. This is an elite, 4-step bidding process designed to give the opponent an absolute illusion of total victory while systematically grinding them down to your exact target price. First, you establish your true target price in your mind, which we will call 100%. When you make your very first counteroffer, you do not offer that number. You shock their system by offering exactly 65% of your target. Step 1, offer exactly 65% of your true target price. It is a harsh. Step 2, calculate a calculated increase to 85% of your target. 80 is a major concession. Step 3, Step up the offer to exactly 95% of your target. Shows you are hitting the absolute limit. Step 4. Deliver the final 100% target as an incredibly precise, non-round number with a tangible gift. When you deliver that final ultimate offer, you do not say $50,000 or $100,000, because round numbers look like arbitrary, greedy guesses that have plenty of room for negotiation. Instead, you look at the client and say $47,532. A non-round, highly precise number communicates a powerful psychological illusion that you have calculated your expenses down to the absolute penny and that you have absolutely no room left to give. To seal the deal, you immediately throw in a small, non-monetary, completely random personal item, like a specific piece of corporate merchandise or a basket of local fruit, proving that you are physically emptying your pockets to give them everything you have. The opponent will accept the deal, completely exhausted by the process, feeling an immense sense of victory because they believe they have successfully squeezed every single available dollar out of your system. Ultimately, the philosophy of Chris Voss requires you to abandon your fear of conflict and walk through the world with an unshakable sense of emotional control. You must realize that a negotiation is not a linear intellectual debate to be won with arrogant logic. It is a highly delicate psychological dance of discovery. By treating every difficult opponent as an emotional puzzle to be solved, by mastering the late-night DJ voice, by inviting the word no, and by weaponizing calibrated questions, you completely neutralize the hostility of the marketplace. You transform yourself from a vulnerable victim of financial pressure into a master of human behavior, capable of protecting your boundaries, uncovering the hidden truths of the world, and securing legendary agreements where everyone leaves the table feeling like a winner.